As artists and producers and creatives, I'm absolutely certain that at some point you've felt that frustration of being stuck in the process of creating. It's happened to me many times before, as I'm absolutely certain it's happened to you many times before. Maybe it's just you don't know where to start. Maybe you don't know how to push the project along, or maybe you just don't know how to finish it. I've definitely experienced that in the past, like call it writer's block or whatever. There's been points where I just cannot get it to go, and it is really fucking frustrating. I'm sure you felt that frustration as well. It's sort of like a negative feedback loop. You get into it and you can almost build on top of itself to the point where you just want to sort of distance yourself from being creative. The thing to know is that there is help available, just so long as you are open to it. And there's many tools available to help us. One of my favorite ones is actually a book. It's this book. It's called Making Music. It's 74 Creative Strategies for Electronic Music Producers. It's by DeSantis. Now, I don't have any affiliation with Dennis or this book or anything like that. I'm just wanting to share it with you because I think it's such a valuable tool to those that actually want to get help to try and push their projects along. What makes this book so special and why I want to share it with you is because of the way it's arranged. It's split into 3 sections. The first one is solutions, creative solutions for problems that you experience when you're starting projects. The middle section is for progressing projects. And then the back end of the book is just about finishing projects. It covers most scenarios that you've probably felt whilst you're trying to create music. It is so valuable. So this episode is really about showing you how to use the book and just talking about a few points that it brings up. I'll do a few live demonstrations as well with my projects, just so that you can get a sense of how this thing works. I think one of the most important parts of this process is just accepting that you do need help. And that's fine. Like, it's better to be open about that and accept it and then move on to the solution than just be stuck in frustration. Again, as artists, I feel like we can get emotionally quite flared up. So when we get to, start to buy into that frustration, it can really stop us from moving forward. One thing that I have learned is to just accept these feelings as they come, just so that I know that that is how I feel, so that I can just move past it instantly and actively look for the solution. And this is a really great place to start. But I think the point here is that you have to want to get the help first, because you're going to be way more receptive to it rather than just blowing it off. The book has a few different ways of presenting the problems and solutions. Some are just more philosophical, but they really help you understand like maybe the root cause of the problem that you are facing. And it's easy to accept the points that Dennis is trying to put forward here. Once you do, you can really sort of start to move on. Others are more practical. There's lots of like graphs and screenshots that help explain the solution as it goes along. But I wanted to start by talking about a philosophical problem that it presents. As you can see here, we have the problem and the solution. And this one is talking about originality versus quality, which is something that you've probably heard me talk about on my content quite a lot. So the problem it presents is this: you're happy with the music you make, and others are as well. But deep down, you don't believe it's truly original, and you feel that you should be working harder to find a sound that is uniquely your own. So what's the solution that he presents? What does originality actually mean in the musical context? As a descriptor, all it tells you is that something sounds unique, or that its influences are not obvious. But what the word doesn't convey is any information about quality, which is a far more valuable characteristic. Original and good are not mutually exclusive, but they are also not correlated. There is plenty of terrible music that sounds like nothing else, and in many cases, the very characteristic that makes it original are also the ones that make it bad. Consider that what one artist thinks is original may simply be something that other artists have already tried and discarded. Instead of aiming for an abstract goal like originality, instead aim for concrete goals like quality. It does go on to explain the point a little bit more, but I think the way it wraps it up is quite nice. In the end, the music that is remembered is not necessarily the music that's the most radically avant-garde. Instead, it's the music that's good. If you can achieve both quality and originality, then you're a rarity. But the primary goal should always be quality first. This is my point here. Once you sort of accept these things, it's really easy to let go of the frustrations and the problems that you have faced in the process. So, Let's dive into a few more practical ones. I'll jump on to Ableton Live and we'll go through this together. Okay, so let's start with something from the problems with beginning. I found this one quite interesting, and I think it would be a really good practical exercise. So it's about goalless exploration. So the problem it presents is this. You're sitting in front of your door, but you're uninspired. You've opened the door out of habit because you know you should, or because you have this abstract feeling of wanting to make music, but you have no real sense that you actually want to make anything in particular. This feels frustrating and like a waste of time. Maybe you should just close the door and try again another day. Yeah, I mean, I'm sure this is something that we've all experienced before. I mean, it rings bells. The solution. If you've already taken the steps to open your door, you should congratulate yourself. This is a farther step than many musicians have got today. Our computers and even the real world offer endless distractions that can prevent us from even beginning the work. And although our underlying goal is to get as much music made as possible, sometimes this is too much responsibility to bear. Even though you don't feel like working, once the door is open, there are a number of things that you can do to seize the moment, even if it's a brief one. Goalless exploration is the process of simply finding a corner of your working space and letting yourself see what evolves from there. For example, maybe there's a particular instrument or effect in your DAW that you've never taken the time to learn, or that you've tried to use but could never find a place for in your music. Since the door is open anyway, try loading these devices and just experiment with them. Without the pressure of trying to use them in music, just spend time learning what sorts of sounds they can make. Perfect, let's give it a go. Okay, so we're just going to experiment here. I don't have any clue where this is going to go. All I know is that I really want to play with this spectral resonator. So I've just loaded that in with an instance of wavetable. Now I'm going to get a sequencer, which is the MDD snake. I'm sure you all know and love this bad boy. I just want something quite nice and simple. I might just turn the spectral resonator off just so I can get something going. I want to put it in a specific key, so I'm going to go for G pentatonic minor. There's nothing groundbreaking about this. Something I really enjoy doing is just grouping the MDD snake and then duplicating it within the rack a few times, and then just sort of changing where some of the notes play. Why? Because I just get this nice randomness. I guess when I'm making music, half the time I don't know what's going on. So don't ask. I'm just experimenting, and really that works for me. So I'm just going to experiment here. I like to make my gate on the sequences polyrhythmic, just so that I'm getting weird rhythms, obviously. Just going to see what that sounds like. Actually, I'm just going to change the notes a bit. I'm really heavily leaning on the randomness here, as you can see. Sure, let's go with that. I'm going to turn the spectral resonator on. Now, the way I've set it up is I've gone for this MIDI mode on it because I want to take the MIDI from the wavetable as it's coming in. And I've turned on this, the current scale mode. So this is in Ableton Live 12. I'm just going to play around with it and honestly just see what happens. I have no idea what I'm doing here. Whoa. That sounds really cool already. You can't ask for much more in a really short amount of time. I really am enjoying this low frequency and high frequency dampener because I've turned the pitch down by 12 semitones, so an octave. And it's giving me this really nice bass sound, and like that is already really inspiring me. So this is another problem with beginning. It's more of like a philosophical one, but I thought it was worth sharing. I resonated with it this morning. It's called the tyranny of the default. It feels like I'm reading you a bedtime story, but in any case, let's go. The problem is this. Every time you're inspired to start a new song, you open your door and you are immediately terrified by the blank project. Maybe you have a simple melody, a bass line, or a drum part in your head, but in order to hear it, you first have to load the appropriate instruments, set the tempo, maybe get a MIDI controller, those sorts of things. By the time you've gotten your door to a state where you can actually record, you've either lost the motivation or you've forgotten the idea that you had in the first place. This has definitely happened to me before. I'm sure it's happened to you. So, what's the solution here? Rather than allowing your door to dictate the environment in which you'll start each track, take the time to build your own default or template project. People often think as templates as blank states containing bare minimum of elements. And the most default templates provided by DAWs are exactly that. Maybe one or two empty tracks, perhaps a return track containing a single effect. But if you regularly start work in a similar way, and even if you don't, building a template that's unique to your musical preferences and working style can save you lots of time when you want to start a new song, allowing you more quickly to capture the initial musical idea that you had in your head and putting that down onto your DAW. Now, I think this is one worth discussing. There is more information that he goes to say on this, but I think one point that I think is worth mentioning is that it's absolutely fine to use templates. I do this all the time. I will make a project from scratch, I'll tune it and I'll get it sounding really good, and then I'll go back to it. I'll finish a song and then I'll open up the project again, delete most of the stuff apart from some core elements, maybe the bass line, the kick, things that I know are working really well and things that are inspiring me at the moment. And then I'll make new tracks from that. I think it's really important that if you are going to do the template thing, that you don't fall into the trap of just making the same thing again and again and again and again and again. It's really easy to get comfortable with your processes, but that might actually lead you to a path where you're not really feeling the excitement from it anymore. So I think it's important that if you do this template idea, that you keep in mind of keeping your sound fresh. It should be a new idea, so long as you're aware that it doesn't sound like too much, at least like your previous project from the same template. You know, it's something new, it's something different, then I think that's really good. It's saving you a lot of time. I found that this really works for me just by going in and quickly putting ideas down, because then I'm just caught up in the energy of the moment. I'm not wasting time trying to figure it out and, as I've said, losing motivation. So I think this is a really key one. Just so long as you're making sure that your sound is staying fresh, making sure that you're being, I guess, like honest with yourself about that, then perfect. This is really good. Just don't fall into the trap of making the same thing again and again and again and again, because you might find that your sound fatigues kind of quickly. All right, so let's take one from the problems of progressing. So the problem here is this. You keep making the same kinds of beats over and over again, and you're looking for some way to expand your palette of rhythmic ideas. We often develop a vocabulary of musical ideas that we rely on to create new music. Like spoken language, the richness of our musical expression is directly related to the depth of this vocabulary. When we only know a few words, we can only say a few things. Likewise, when we only know a few musical patterns, we're limited in our ability to create music that's different from the last time. This sort of touches on that idea, I guess, then of just repeating your processes and not evolving it. And it tends to just get to a point where you feel like you're doing the same thing, so it's not very interesting. Sort of like what we just said with the ideas of templating. So what's the solution here? Find or make an audio recording of anything. You'll get the best results from material that has at least some variation over time. A steady state sine wave probably won't work well for our purposes here, but almost anything else is a viable source. It should be at least a few seconds long, but beyond this, there is no restrictions on length. Very long material, minutes, hours, etc., is fine. Import this audio into your DAW and create a loop around an arbitrary portion of it. Now, while listening, begin to decrease the length of the loop until it's almost a few seconds long. 1 or 2 second loops seem to work the best for this exercise. Alright, so let's give that a go. I find that the hallway in my studio facility has a really nice reverb, so we're going to put that to the test. Now, I'm just going to keep things really simple here, and I'm just going to go to my phone, and I'm literally just going to record some audio from my phone using the voice memo section. So, phone, hallway, recording, beautiful. Just going to set my phone down here. All right, let's see what that sounds like. 2 minutes later, mate. So in the interest of total honesty, the footage I recorded of my initial reaction to listening back to this was corrupted, so you don't get to see it. So I've listened back to this. That being said, it's still quite cool. Some other things worth noting is that I've added in some other elements into this project, such as like some drums and so on and so forth, just to build on top of what we had. And again, I'm looking for, I don't know, something percussive or whatnot. So let's just listen back to the initial, I guess, recording. Beautiful. Just going to set my phone down here. All right, let's see what that sounds like. All right, by all accounts, it's like a really poor quality recording. But that, I think, gives it some character. And there was one particular section that really caught my attention, which I'll just loop here. I mean, the excitement's already coming back. Like, you can hear the rhythm in that, and there's that nice, like, transient click. If anything, you could use that transient as like a nice little clap or something like that. However, I did morph it into a loop, such as this, and then I put some EQ on, which I'll turn on now, and then some overdrive just to give it some more grit. So it's pretty cool. So let's just listen to this with some drums. It was honestly just too easy. With the recording of the audio, I'll show you here, like Ableton obviously gives little transients. I've dragged a few of them around just to make sure that it made sense. But honestly, this loop took me no time to make, and like, Now, this is what it sounds like with that initial spectral resonator loop that we were making. I took this, I took the liberty of taking this a bit further and added some percussion. I couldn't help myself. It sounds like this. It's such a good little tip. Yeah, it's really worth trying that. And that took no time at all. And it had, you've got the resources available to you. You've got a phone. If you have a microphone or a field recorder, whatever, it doesn't matter. That was too easy. So let's move on to another passage from the book. This is still problems with progressing, and it's called linear rhythm in melodies. I've never tried this before, so I just open up to a random page from the book to see what was in there. So the problem is this. You can come up with the beginnings of a good melody, but you're looking for ways to generate more variations and complexity. In general, your melodic ideas don't have the depth or richness of those you admire. Melodies are hard. Almost by definition, they are the most important and memorable aspects of a good piece of music. But coming up with one that's worth remembering feels almost as challenging as writing an entire rest of the song. Here's a technique you can try for generating more interest in your melodic writing. The solution. Hocket is a compositional technique in which the notes of a melodic line quickly alternate between two or more different instruments, such that no two instruments are playing at the same time. It is a melodic equivalent of linear drumming, which is something else that he explains in the book, and can potentially turn bland melodies into interesting counterpoints. Hocket usually works best for fast tempos and when played by instruments with fast attacks and releases. It's a difficult technique for humans to play accurately, but works well for electronic music. As an example, let's begin with a simple loop. Okay, so it's got some graphs, I guess, but obviously that's going to be pretty hard to translate over this. So I'm just going to go through it step by step on Ableton. All right, so for this example, I thought the best thing to do would just be continue to build on the track that we've been working on. So we've got the hallway recording, we've got the weird spectral resonator experiment, and then the drums that I've added. I think the easiest thing to do here would just to be record the MIDI from the sequencer, just so that things are sort of in key and making sense. So I've just got like a basic wavetable. All I'm going to do is record the MIDI information coming from the wavetable. It's pretty simple. Cool. So what it's basically asking me to do is get
I mean, I guess it's what it's asking me to do is just to get the notes from this and then split it out into 2 or more different voices. So I'm just going to duplicate the wavetable once, twice. I'm going to try it with 3 instances of wavetable. I might just skip forward on this because all I'm going to really do, and it will be very boring to watch, is literally just like go in. As you can see, I've got all the MIDI information, so I'm just going to turn them off bit by bit. So like every third note, basically, I'm just going to turn off. So I'm just going to skip this bit and I'll see you on the other side. Okay, so I've done that now. So I've got these 3 loops of MIDI information. Now it really would just be a case of, I guess, like just making sure that all the different voices are different. I'm going to do something real quick, however, which is the idea's just come to my head, which is to randomize the velocity on all of these notes just to get that idea of movement and randomness coming in, which I quite enjoy. So I might just do a very basic version, which would be just changing some of the waveforms. Let's just see what happens. I'm also just going to, as it said, bring down the decay and the release. That's the guidance that it gave. I mean, I think like the waveforms themselves, or at least the wavetables, are a little bit too simple for this purpose right now. That's the thing. I can see this going somewhere quite cool, so I'm just going to start playing with the voices and just see what I can get from them. That's sounding cooler already, and that was just like playing with the envelopes, maybe putting on some of the unison and filters. That didn't take much. Might start pitching them a bit as well. Bit of detune, why not? Cool. I mean, I'm enjoying this so far. What I think I should do is just like make an effects rack on the entire group, just to give it something interesting. Now I'm going to start building out this effects rack. I like using the racks just because I can balance out each effect that I'm using. I'm going to put an LFO on this, erosion, just to, again, give it movement. And map a few of them out. I'm just going to put an echo on the erosion. I mean, I don't know why I'm doing this, but... put some panning on them. Although the voices are a bit basic for me right now, I still think it's quite cool. So I might just bring in maybe this Fletch work and just see what happens if I actually start changing the voices. Right now, I think the idea is cool. I'm just not bought into it at this exact time just because I think the actual synth sounds are just a bit basic. Cool. Changing it to this little Fletchwork synth has actually made it a bit more interesting. So I might just start doing some stuff. That sounds cool. Just putting an amp on it, on the whole group. I think I don't like this wavetable down here. So again, I might go to my Fletchwork. Now, the reason why I'm using Fletchwork, it's a free Max for Live device. Really quite powerful once you sort of get to grips with it. I might put a multiband compressor on it just to really crunch it up like that. Now, people like to just chuck a flatline or an OTT on things and just call it a day. I find that I really, sometimes it can just flatten the sound or just sort of give the opposite effect. So I'm just going to adjust the settings on the compressor. What does it sound like with some percussion? It's sounding pretty cool, and really I've lent on randomness here to create the melody. I mean, this is just the sequencer that we had before. You could, if you wanted to program something more structured in terms of melodic content, then you could obviously program your own melodies in, and then just go with this sort of different voice technique. But I think this is really cool. I also think it's really cool that there's 3 really simple ideas in one track. It didn't take long. There was just randomly exploring some sounds. There was the hallway footstep thing, and then now there's this, and that's sort of making this track what it is when you're using that same technique built up on them. Yeah, I mean, I think this is cool. Maybe it's just in the mix I turn this like hocketing thing down just so we can let the main synth breathe a bit and like have that be the idea that's carrying the whole track through. But yeah, I mean, this is quite cool. Cool. All right, so let's move on to problems with finishing. Now, this section is not about men's sexual health. This is still staying within Ableton Live. Now, this one is called arranging as a subtractive process. I'm going to describe the problem and then we'll go through the solution as normal. So, you have more than enough ideas to make up a finished song, but don't know how to actually put the arrangement together. Even the process of arranging sounds like an intimidating commitment. How can you even begin, let alone finish? Again, this is about Ableton. In the context of music creation in a DAW, the arrangement refers to the layout of the parts of your song along the timeline. You may have assembled a rich pool of materials, but the actual act of putting that material into some kind of order that unfolds over time is what will eventually turn that material into a finished song. Getting from a pile of stuff to a song is a difficult process, both conceptually and technically. The most common way people approach creating the arrangement is the most obvious one. Gradually fill the empty arrangement with various combinations of the material you've made, moving from the beginning to the right to the end. In this workflow, the arrangement timeline is analogous to the blank canvas to which you apply the paint until a finished painting appears from what was originally an empty white space. This process works fine, of course, but facing emptiness can be scary. Even though you've already put a considerable amount of time into preparing the materials that you plan to use, you now face something that might feel like a reset to zero. Beginnings are hard, and a blank canvas or an empty timeline can be a difficult mental bridge to cross. So, what's the solution here? If you're finding that you're stuck at the arranging stage, here's one process that might help. Start by immediately filling your entire arrangement with material on every track. Spend as little time as possible thinking about this step. The goal right now isn't to try and create a good arrangement. You just want to start with something rather than nothing. It's okay that you don't know how long the song will eventually be. Just fill up the average song's worth of time, or even more if you want, in whatever way is the fastest in your particular DAW. So, it wants you to basically just get all of your stuff and stretch it out. For example, like I'll dive into that right now and we'll just see what happens. Okay, so I've done what it's asked. As you can see on the screen, I've literally just got everything, every loop I've made, and just apart from that thing, and that thing, and just stretched it out into something that's 7 minutes long. Sounds like this. Cool. So that to me really is like the track on maximum attack. Like it's just everything's in at one point. So now that you've filled the timeline, the process of actually making your arrangement into music becomes one of subtraction rather than one of addition. If the traditional arranging workflow is analogous to painting, the subtractive workflow is analogous to sculpting. You're beginning with a solid block of raw material and then gradually chipping away at it, creating space where there used to be stuff, rather than filling space that used to be empty. This can be a much more productive way to work for a number of reasons. For example, it's often easier to hear when something is bad than it is to imagine something good. If a particular combination of ideas doesn't make musical sense, you can generally feel this right away, and the steps to fix it may be obvious. Maybe an element is simply too loud, or the bass line clashes with the harmony. And because you're listening back to an actual flow of sound over time, you'll probably have an intuitive sense of when a song section has been going on for too long. Your own taste will tell you that it's time for a change. Okay, cool. So let's just try this out then. Like if we're being subtractive, then let's obviously just start taking things away. Now, I mean, it makes sense here that at the very beginning of a track, I kind of don't want it to be, I don't want it to be in maximum attack. Like I'm thinking about the DJ here in a sense, like I'm going to want to give them time to mix it together. Like if this was coming out on vinyl, then you need to make a special consideration as well. Like does the DJ have time to mix it in? That kind of thing. So let's just see what happens here. Now, I think that taking most of the percussion away is probably a really good idea at this point. I'm sort of thinking and of the opinion that atmosphere is sort of what I need, as well as like a solid drum rhythm. So I'm just going to start literally just deleting stuff. I don't need any of these things. I might keep something in, like maybe this hi-hat. Okay, so obviously that's a lot clearer already. I think having shakers in there is probably not necessary at this point, or hi-hats. So I'm just going to take them out, and this is what we have now. Still a bit too much going on. Here's one sound. I know for sure that it's too much. Interestingly enough, that sound was recorded walking down a hallway as well, that had a really nice sound to it, so I wanted to capture that vibe. And then I've just put a shitload of effects on it to make it all as it is. This second sound might be better. There's more space, so I'm really enjoying that. I think the one above it as well is just a smidge too loud, so I'll turn that down a few decibels. There we go. Okay, what's it sounding like? So obviously more clean. I guess the choice is this, like if I'm starting at this point, it's coming in pretty hot. So then I've got to think about the way it builds, as opposed to if I took maybe this out and just started with a hi-hat. Maybe I take the hi-hat out. Oops. Okay, so it's kind of like developing nicely, and there's enough space and time there for things to happen. So like I generally go off maybe everything changing around a 16 bar mark. So if it gets to 16, my instinct just tells me to take the kick out at this point. Cool. Now we're just in the track in a sense. Now I kind of want to tease in a few elements. I have a lot of percussion here, so something I might do is just, as you can see on the screen, like click and get some of it and just have it for like a few bars. Maybe not that sound, just because that nice clicky hi-hat thing might just be a nice subtle additional layer to the other hi-hat I have. So maybe it's like, what is this? Maybe it's just that at the very beginning of this new 16 bar period. I think I need something else to come in here. Not that. Cool. Cool. What I'm thinking here is to take one of the elements that I have out as I add something in. So I'm sort of subtracting as I'm adding. Let's just say, again, I don't know what I'm doing. I'm just doing stuff and just I'm finding out what works. And I'm just going to be guided by my instinct here. That actually works. Again, I might try this trick of just having one little bit of this sound. So this other thing I've got called shards, I might add one of them in on the change just to signify that it's changing. Now, I like that idea again of just adding these little one shots in. So I'm just going to sort of fill a few bits and spaces with what I do have. That might actually work well with one of the claps I have, like this. That open hi-hat into clap could be kind of... Cool. Then I'm going to try it again, just add bits and just sort of see what happens. Like I like this cymbal down here. You can hear it. It's subtle. It's like a noise, but the presence that it adds into your track is really nice. But again, I'm just teasing here. Like I can't give all my cards away at the very beginning. Excuse me here. Otherwise, I'm going to have nowhere to go. So I need to tease it out just nicely. I'm going to run back over this section again, just so you understand what's going on. I'm going to start from bar 33. So when the shakers, or bar 32, just before the shakers come in. I mean, this is already working, and like I'm at a point where I'm almost 2 minutes into a track and the tension's building just nicely. So again, let's listen back. And it's really fucking important to keep listening back. I know it's tedious, but you got to do it, because what you're really trying to assess is if it's building the tension in the right way. I'm relying on my instinct here to tell me if something's wrong, and that's a trained instinct. So I'm just waiting to hear what isn't working in a way. I'm also just seeing if it is working. If I don't hear anything that doesn't work, that gives me a good sense that things are working. So let's just go back to the beginning. So that's working. And like, as I was doing just then, I was taking things out on the fly. Now, I should explain that process. In my mind, I'm thinking like a DJ. I'm thinking, if I was playing this, like what kind of things I might do as a DJ, like taking the bass out, whatever. I'm letting that instinct guide my choices. So it's really helpful knowing that this is a subtractive process, because I can quickly just highlight little snippets, like say taking out the kick or whatever, and then just quickly just taking them out to create those moments. For example, it was this one here. Now, if I wanted to do something a little bit more, I could just get these notes like just before it drops, just to create the space. Let's try again. It's kind of nasty. Yeah, so this one, again, it really is working for me. It's kind of interesting because the next, I guess, thing I was going to talk about is just a few pages over, and it's called The Power of Erasing. The problem it presents is this. You feel like your music lacks the fullness of the music that inspires you, but your attempts to solve the problem often end in music that just feels cluttered or messy. It's tempting to think of a song as being something like an unlimited physical space. And that way, to fill the space involves adding more stuff. But in reality, musical space has boundaries, like a canvas. There is a limit to how much you can add before you're simply covering something that's already there. It goes on to sort of explain that by erasing things, like you can actually make them sound more powerful. This is something I've been like buying into a lot more recently, and I believe it, like giving things the space. When you've made your loops, or you've made your I guess like the core groove of the track, and you've colored it up, like maybe you've added some saturation, whatever, there's some noise, something like this, it's really interesting to just stop and listen to that, and listen to like the detail and the texture that you can find in there. More often than not, you'll find that is really, 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 really powerful. It's like just thinking to try and give things as much space as possible is so fucking powerful, particularly in this music. It's like all the space in between the notes of the drums and stuff where like magic happens, particularly if you're mixing these things. Like if it's always too full on, then it's sort of hard to layer. You're just playing a track, and that's fine. I guess it just depends upon the context. But like it's this power of erasing, and you saw me do it just in the previous example. I was able to create these moments of tension and release just by taking stuff out. And if I go back to the very beginning of the loop, we can just sort of hear I guess it's just the texture, like all this like kind of stuff going in the background. So if you're adding stuff in, you're going to miss out on all like these little great fine grainy details, and like that really adds character to your track. So I think the lesson here is learning to respect the space and letting things breathe.
So I wanted to wrap up story time with the last solution in this book. It's called Fail Better. It starts with a quote. Ever tried, ever failed, no matter, try again, fail better. The problem, the closer you get to finishing the track, the more you realize that it's a failure. It will be impossible to turn this into something that you're proud of. Why bother finishing it at all? Wouldn't it make more sense to just abandon it and start over on a completely different project? It's depressing to realize that you've made something bad. It's even more depressing to realize it whilst you're working on it, but after it's beyond a point of any hope of salvation. But in this situation, there are still valid reasons to keep going and finish the track anyway. So what's the solution? Most producers have started far more tracks than they've finished. It's easier to give up in the middle of a project and move on to something new than it is to see the project through to the very end. But what most producers don't realize is that each stage of the music making process itself is a thing that requires practice. We get to be better at sound designers by designing sounds. We get to be better drum programmers by programming drums. And we get to be better song finishers by finishing songs. Because of this, the more songs we start but don't finish, the more opportunities we miss out to practice finishing. And as a result, we might continually improve at various aspects of the early stages, but will never improve at actually getting things done. If you realize very early that what you're working on isn't going to be successful, you probably have time to change direction and make things better. But if you're very late in the process of making the track before realizing that it's not good, it might be too late to fix it without completely gutting it, which essentially is the same thing as starting over. In these cases, force yourself to finish, no matter how painful, is often better than giving up. You'll not only practice finishing, but you'll also get to practice failing, in itself a valuable skill to learn in a subjective and unpredictable business like art. The better you get at finishing, and the better you get at coping with failure, the better your chances will be the next time you begin and hopefully finish a project. I think this is a really powerful message here. I, in the past few days, have tried to set the goal of making one track per day, and it's just making things really easy to finish the track. I'm getting really dialed in with progressing the idea out. Things are just happening really quick. It's like any sort of skill that you learn. You just have to practice it. Although this book is providing nice solutions to us, it's something that does take time and it takes practice. And I guess what it's trying to say is that if you practice finishing and failing, you're just going to get better at getting to that point. So that when you do start to work on something that you are really into, you'll be really excited to just finish it off, and it will come very natural to you. I guess that sort of comes back to that idea of arrangement. Maybe you practice this subtractive method like a fair bit. Maybe it works really well for you. Maybe you're really dialed in with the flow of the energy across the track and where that takes you as a listener. But I guess the point that it is trying to make is that just finishing the track no matter what should be the objective, so that you get used to that in practice. So I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed my readings from the book. There are many like it, but this one is mine. It's covered in all my coffee stains. It's a little bit beat up, but I like to take it with me places in case I do get stuck. I've actually noticed that through practice, I'm relying less on it because, as I said before, practice is really important. Those sorts of processes start to get dialed in to your music making process. So, yeah, I really recommend this. Again, they haven't reached out or contacted me or anything. I just think it's really fucking helpful. The main thing is that you accept that you want to get help with your work. Once you open yourself up to that, it's going to be much easier and way more enjoyable to actually go through these sorts of processes. And you saw me before, that was completely random, but I have gone from, just another day in the studio to really fucking happy because this just, it was easy. It was just, here's the recipe, follow it, and then see what happens. I think that's really the beauty of this book, is because that the solution that you get will be through your own filter. You'll have your own ideas, your own influences. Whatever you make will spark your interest in a different way. This is what happened to me, and I'm actually really thrilled with the result, because I'll probably go back to that and try and finish it off. I need to make a track today, so that could be the one. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. Once again, if you have any comments, questions, anything like that, please feel free to leave them there. I'll get back to you. But yeah, thanks for watching again, and I'll catch you next time.